Here's a recap of what we did for 2023 for the summer. We had the going away party the last day of March, and we took off and went to Tallahassee, stayed at the Automobile Museum there, which was Harvest Host. We had 30 amp service, so it worked out good. It was just an overnight stay. Then we took off and went to Gulfport, Mississippi, and stayed at Shields Navy Base for a few days, and we had to go, of course, to the shrimp basket, which they have great food there, and they have lots of good shrimp. And then another day we went to Beach Boulevard, Gulfport, Mississippi, to the steamer, and had the Royal Red Shrimp, which are unbelievable. They're caught at depths of 3,000 feet. Then we drove over to New Orleans, to the French Corner, and I had the muffalette sandwich, which was the best I've ever had. Then we took off and went to Lake Charles for just a one-night overnight stay. And that was Easter. We had gotten a ham, honey-baked ham, in New Orleans and got it to go.
Luling was founded in 1874 as a railroad town and became a rowdy center for the cattle drivers on the Chisholm Trail. Contempt of the law by the cowboys helped Luling become known as the toughest town in Texas. The Watermelon Thump is a seed-spitting contest in the end of June of each year. The mill was a hub of activity, producing flour, meal, and other products for the surrounding area. Luling was a home for the first Buc-ee's Travel Center. Buc-ee's is replacing its current Luling location, and the new structure will claim the title of world's largest convenience store when it opens in 2024. So our next stop was at San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston, Texas, at the military base there. We stayed there for a week. While there, we visited the U.S. Army Medical Department Museum with some nice, interesting information there at the museum. Our next stop was then, while we were there, visiting the Riverwalk, which we've been there several times. We visited the Mission, Conception, a couple of other missions. We went to visit Fredericksburg. They had some nice shops there, spent the day there. Afterwards, we went to a couple of other missions. There was Mission Esplanada. Mission San Juan. And Mission San Jose. So continuing on our trip, we went into Waxahachie, Texas. We stayed there at the Northside RV Resort. While we were there, we were visiting with my brother, oldest brother Harold Jr., and then we went on to Catfish O'Charlie's on our way to Childress. Catfish O'Charlie's, great place to stop at, just north in Decatur.
After a great lunch, we went the rest of the way up to Childress, Texas, and we ended up staying in the city park there, which was 30 amp hookup with water, and it was very inexpensive. Then the rodeo was right next door, so we had to go over there that night. Had a great time. Next morning, we took off to Tucumcari, New Mexico, and stayed in Blazing Saddle RV Park overnight. For dinner that night, we went to La Cita Mexican Food, which is right there in town. Had great margaritas. They had homemade chips and salsa, which was excellent. And we got a combination plate, which was great. The next morning, we took off to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and stayed at the Route 66 Casino RV Park that's behind the casino. Full hookups. An excellent park. We had a lovely time staying there. Nice view. Nice bright weather. The next day for lunch, we went to Old Town, explored that, and ended up eating at Ezra's Taste of Home Mexican restaurant right there. And we ordered a black cherry margarita, which, oh man, it was good. And I had the chili rellenos, which were really good. And Brenda had the fish tacos, which was shrimp and fish, and she loved them. We visited Petroglyph National Monument, walked through the little trail there and saw all the petroglyphs, which was really nice, and it was good exercise. And then we'd gone to the Indian Pueblo Culture Center, which that has a lot of history there, and they had a little show there we watched. That was great. Another day we went up to Santa Fe, New Mexico, in Old Town, and walked around there in this beautiful old town. They have lots of little shops to walk through and places to eat and all kinds of stuff. And then we continued up to White Rock Overlook Park and stopped there to look at the Colorado River on the way to Bandelier National Monument, which was very interesting. That's where the Indians used to live, and it was very, very interesting. Then we took off and went towards Flagstaff to Twin Arrows Casino, and they have parking out there in the parking lot for RVs and no hookups, but it worked for an overnight stay, quick overnight stay. The next morning we left there and went to Las Vegas to Nellis Air Force Base, which is just north of Las Vegas there, and we had a nice campground there. We ended up staying here for 2 months. Now we were there for Mother's Day. That's my mother and brother and myself. And then of course we picked up a train collection and made some extra money while we were in Las Vegas. We visited with Brenda's daughter and son, and this is her other grandson. We ate at Scrambled Breakfast. We had to go there, of course, and have breakfast, and their Irish Benny's great. And we then went over to BurgerFi, and they've got good onion rings, good fries, and a great burger. So we had to go there. And that's another picture of some more train collections. We picked up 2 collections while we were there. We went to Barachas, Mexico's Cantina, and that's our friends Spike and Kathy, and had dinner with them. And then, of course, had to play some machines and win a little money. That helped. And then, of course, I had to stop at Starbucks on the way out of town. So we left the 1st of July out of Las Vegas and headed to southeast Utah to Camp Lutherwood, which is just on the other side of 89, which was a nice place. A dirt road to get up there, but it was nice. The deer are very friendly there. At eating Brenda's plant there, and I was feeding it little tomatoes, and it ate them. Then we went up to our friend's cabin. It wasn't too far away, and rode the quads around and had a great time. I mean, the weather was really nice. We've always loved going there. And drove around, took some pictures of this and that, and found some deer and some antelope. It was, it's always pretty there. We spent a lot of time over the years at that cabin. So, and we all stayed on the quads. Nobody fell off, so we did good. Next stop was Cedar Breaks National Monument, which we went up there and took a few pictures and enjoyed the scenery up there. It was another nice day there, no doubt about it. It's always something you should go see if you can get there and see it, because it's just amazing views. Well, another day we went over to the east entrance of Zion National Park, and on the way in, there's buffalo herd there that they have fenced in. And entering Zion on the east side is a little different. Usually we always came on the west side, but we went the east side this time. It's got amazing views. They've got a tunnel that's only 13 foot one clearance, so you don't want to drag something big trailer through there. That's just a tunnel window. Got beautiful mountains, beautiful views. Then we stopped in Springdale, Utah. That's on the west side at the Bumbleberry. And we had to pick up some bumbleberry jam, which we love. And then we went and had a sandwich there, and I had the cordon bleu sandwich. And then you had to have bumbleberry ice cream, which is really, really good. Another day we went to, we stopped at Red Canyon. That's on the way to Bryce, Utah, Bryce Canyon. And getting to Bryce is just amazing, but Red Canyon is very pretty on the way there. And now we're entering Bryce Canyon. And there's lots of things to stop and look at different points of view. The scenery is just amazing there. It's one of my favorite places. A lot of people photograph this year-round. It's beautiful with the snow on it. I've seen pictures of that. And we went to about every stop we could. It's about, I don't know, 16, 17-mile trip through there and back down. I think it's about 17 miles to go up, if I remember right. But they got the natural bridge here, which you can see that right there. And the elevations aren't bad at all. I mean, there's a very good road going up there and back, all paved. And it's just one of our favorite places to always go. Well, then it was time to leave and head to Moab, Utah, which we got there and found a beautiful campground there. Nice scenery, nice laid out. And then we went over to Dead Horse Point State Park. Now that Dead Horse, that's where the cowboys would push the cattle to that point, and that way they could corral them up and catch them, as they had nowhere to go. Otherwise they'd go straight down. They weren't too interested in doing that. So there's some history there, and it's worth walking around and looking at that. Then we drove back into Moab to the Moab Diner for lunch, and we ordered a chocolate shake, which was really, really good. And then their hamburgers and fries are very good, and Brenda had the fish and chips, and those were excellent. So that made a nice treat for lunch. The next day we went to Arches National Park, which is in Moab, not too far from where we were camped. And this is a beautiful, beautiful place. Moab's basically known for the arches. The rock formations are just unbelievable. It's so fun to just go through and see what you can see. And it's like, oh, this rock kind of looks like this. And then we got some Indian petrographs here also. And a lot of scenery. It's just beautiful here. And we hiked a few trails, looked around, and just had another beautiful day. Enjoyed the scenery. I've always seen a lot of pictures, never been to here. So I'm glad we came. These arches, the way they're formed with the wind, is just unbelievable. Then we went to the Island in the Sky Visitor Center. And then from there we started, got a map and started driving around and looking at places. We saw this rock with a little pathway out there. So we started down the hill, and it wasn't too far of a walk. Of course, looking to the right side, you can see a dirt road. That dirt road would take you about 100 miles through the bottom of the canyons if you want to do it. And then there's Brenda standing up there out on the edge up there. And me, on the way back up the hill, I found a rock chair to sit down in. I needed a break. But you can see it's quite the terrain. Different formations, and where the river has carved out some big canyons in it. And it's got a lot of different rock formations. So we enjoyed our time here, and it was a really great thing to see. Next we went to Newspaper Rock and then up to the Canyonlands. On the south end, Newspaper Rock, you can see why they call it Newspaper Rock. And here's the Needles. That forms the southwest corner. They call that the shoe, which it looks like a shoe. And these are they call these mushrooms. And you can see as a close-up, they kind of look like a mushroom. Beautiful place. On our last day at Moab, we decided to go to Goblin Valley State Park. And then we were going to go over to Capitol Reef on the way also. Goblin Valley is an interesting little place with stones kind of look like goblins. which I hadn't been there since I was a little kid. So it brought back a lot of memories of when I was little. Anyway, we looked around there for a little bit, and then off we went to Capitol Reef National Park. Went to the visitor center, which was interesting. They have free orchards. You just go in there and pick some fruit. And it was very interesting here. Being our last day, we tried to see as much as we could in the southeast Utah. And then, of course, like everything, the rock formations are great. And then we drove up to Fish Lake National Park on the way out, which was pretty good elevation. Here it was in July, and there still was snow on the ground up there on the mountains. And it was just amazing. The temperature was about 71 degrees, which was nice. The next morning we took off out of Moab and drove up to Hill Air Force Base, which is just north of Salt Lake City. And we have a nice campground there. It was nice. And then we went over to the Hill Air Force Museum. And that was very interesting, very well done. They have a lot of planes to look at, a lot of history there. We had a really, really good time there. Of course, I love airplanes, so it was fun to look at. And then we drove over to the Golden Spike National Historic Park, which I'd never been there either. And lo and behold, they had the locomotives. They were firing the one up. And so we were able to watch that run. And it was a good time there. A lot of history about the railroad, which we enjoyed. Just in Ogden there, they have Cold Springs, which we'd never been there either, and we thought we'd go look at it. And it's a trout farm, and you can just go there and pay to catch some trout, which we walked around and looked at people catching fish. And of course, I did see a nice rainbow there. That was a nice big one. And now we went up to Ogden Canyon from there, and there was a little waterfall coming off of it, and we took some pictures there. Brenda always likes the waterfalls. Then we went another day. We decided to go to the Mirror Lake Scenic Byway and see the Mirror Lake, and that was beautiful there. A lot of scenic elevations, around 10,000 feet. And then we drove by Timpanogos Cave. We were not able to go on tour there, but we did stop and look. Then we went to Cascade Springs, which is just west of Heber, Utah, but we went up there and walked through that, never been there. And then on the way down the canyon, of course, we saw Timpanogos Mountain, and then Bridal Veil Falls and Provo Canyon. Next, we went on to Idaho. We went up to Mountain Home Air Force Base and stayed there, which was very nice. Then we went over to Boise, Idaho, and went to the Botanical Garden, which here's a tree, which I thought was a dead tree, and no, it's a bunch of scrap wood. They made it look like a tree. They had a lot of beautiful sites with different flowers planted throughout, so we kind of walked around and took some pictures. And it was just nice, relaxing to go through there. Right next door was the old penitentiary historic site. Built in the 1870s, this prison had seen escapees and scandals and everything, you name it. They had it. It was 101 years of operation. Had a museum with lots of guns. And, of course, there's the holding cell, death row. Then we went on to Shoshone Falls Dam, which that's a beautiful place. Spent quite a bit of time there. Took a lot of pictures, but to keep this video short, we just posted a few pictures. And right next to that was Derrick's Lake, which was just above it. And we went up there, and there's people in their rafts and canoes, and kids over there jumping off the cliff into the water, which that looked like a lot of fun. And then next we went over to Why Not Winery, which is an RV park also. You can park there and boondock, and they have full hookups also. And that, we found some wine, and of course we bought some. And beautiful scenery. Another day we went over a Thousand Springs Scenic Byway and decided to start driving some of that. They had the fossil beds, which was interesting. And they have a Hagerman horse, and what's so special about that? Well, there's the bones of one we found in the visitor center. And then we just drove around and looked at the Devil's Wash Bowl, which was interesting. It has a bridge across the canyon. I'll call it a canyon or ravine. There's the Devil's Wash down there. And it looks like you get a pretty good wash. And then that's looking on the other side there. Next, we went over to Niagara Springs Wildlife Management Area. And they have some beautiful springs coming out of the hill there, which was really nice. And there's Centennial Auger Waterfalls and Twin Falls, Idaho. And those just kind of come out. They think we counted 5 or 6 of them. That's just on the west side of Shoshone Falls. And I don't know where all this water comes from, but it's pretty, and it's pretty neat to look at it coming down the mountain. We got quite a few pictures of that, which was really, really enjoyed that going through there. Then we swung by Three Island State Park. That's where all the pioneers crossed, and they had a ferry across that. And they had motorhomes without motors, which there it is right there. That was the first motorhome, I believe. Next, we headed towards Baker City, Oregon. So we went up there, and we ended up boondocking, overnighting at Elkhorn Lavender Farm, which that was very interesting. They grow a lot of lavender. Of course, we stay there for free, which is nice. The lavender's beautiful. The people are very, very nice, the owners. Wealth of information, and that's what they do. They're retired, but that's their full-time little job. Then next we went to Sumter, Oregon, and just drove up there to see what we could find, and we found the best hand-dipped beef hot dogs. They were very, very good. That was Mary. She was a great lady to talk to, and her dog. The next day we took off for Cornell, Washington, and we stayed at the Coyote Run RV Park, which was a nice park. We found some donut peaches, which are delicious. I've never had donut peaches, but they said we had to try them, and I'll tell you what, they were good. We will definitely eat those again. Next day, we went to Mount Rainier National Park, went to the visitor center and explored that, and then we started driving up towards Mount Rainier and what we could see, and it was very interesting to see it. I've always seen pictures of it, never been there. So it was well worth the trip going up there. We had a wonderful time that day. Beautiful weather. Next we went to Cheney, Washington, and went to the Fairfield Air Force Base fam camp. We got there, and it was just in time they were having a reunion, and we had free pizza and drinks, and we had a pretty good little site there. It was great. And there's the free pizza. It was very good, and it was right on the lake there, and I just sit out there and take it easy. The next day we decided to go to Turnbull National Wildlife Refuge and just kind of look around and see what they had to offer there. It's a pretty little place to drive around. Saw these cattails, and I told Brenda that that's a hot dog on a stick, which she didn't buy that. But it was beautiful there. Nice day. We just walked around and looked at everything that they had to offer. Didn't really see any wildlife at all. The following day we went to Lake Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and drove around the whole lake, and it's a big, big lake. It's really nice. It was kind of a cloudy day, but we enjoyed the time, and then we're driving through downtown Coeur d'Alene. and they had a lot of flower baskets and that. And then off we went to Sandpoint, Idaho, which wasn't too far away, and drove around that lake. Sandpoint's the biggest lake in northern Idaho, which is massive. And of course, there's a house I'd love to have with the plane. And then we stopped at Aberdeen Falls, which really wasn't much falls there. It was more or less a dam now. Next we went to Ogden, Montana, and stopped at the 50,000 Silvers bar, and they have free camping with hookups. And there's a couple guys sitting at the bar there, not doing much, and there's their total silver right there to date, which that was a lot of silver. And they have a huge gift shop in there. Next we went that evening to Montana Bar, which is right down the road about 6 miles, and they had the best ribeye steak that was locally grown. It was really good. Next we went to Great Falls, Montana the following day, staying only one day before, and then Great Falls we ended up staying for a week, and we stayed at the Maelstrom Gateway Fan Camp there on the Air Force Base, which that was a really good place to camp. And then we went up to Giant Springs State Park, which is right there in Great Falls, and have a lot of history and a nice, very nice museum there. And then of course there's the waterfalls where the dam's at. And then we went to Fort Benton, Montana, and that was quite a little trip that day. There's the Missouri River there. And then we had lunch at the clubhouse there in Fort Benton, and man, they got a good burger there. Burger was so good. And then we drove by the old Fort Benton, and that's that there. They had it closed because they're remodeling it. And then another day we went to Tower Rock State Park Recreational, and that's quite the tower up there of the mountain. Beautiful area. Really made a nice drive. Another day we went to the Lewis and Clark Cavern State Park, which was a little jaunt, a couple hours away from Great Falls, and did the cave tour, and that's really interesting. We've been in another number of caves, but they're all of them are always different. Leaving Great Falls, Montana, we went up to Essex, Montana, because we wanted to go see as much as we possibly could up in Glacier, which we found a nice place to camp. It was a little tight getting in, but it wasn't bad. First day we went over and saw a shay. There's a shay sitting there. That was interesting to see that and learn a little bit of history on it. Then we drove from there up to Bowman Lake. This is on the very west side of the park. And dust is a 4-letter word, which it was dusty. It was very dusty. There was people fishing along the river and canoeing and kayaking down the river. And then we got to Pole Bridge Mercantile, which that's an interesting little store. It was kind of fun to walk around in there and see all the stuff they had to offer. They had some Huckleberry Bourbon Jam, which we bought, and it's really good. There's the lake itself. We got up there. We spotted a bunch of deer by the lake walking up a little trail. We saw quite a few deer. And it was a little cloudy that day, but weather was nice. The next day we went to the west entrance of Glacier National Park and thought, let's go up there for a little ride and start up that side, going up that side. And the day was nice. It was warm. We stopped at Lake McDonald Hotel and walked around inside the hotel. These hotels, some of them are pretty old, but really built nice. The hotel is very nice. They've got water, and you can go out there and rent a boat or ride on one of the boats. And then driving further up, we had to stop different places and look at the water, and this was really awkward green color because of the rocks. And you can see it was cloudy that day, but we went ahead and drove anyway, and it has a couple tunnels you go through. And the roads are pretty narrow. We had the dually, and you got to be careful, but we made it, no problem. And as you can see, there's a lot of scenery. We spent so much time up there. We ended up spending a whole week up there, every day going up to somewhere in Glacier, a different road, different way, to see things. And they had lots of little waterfalls to stop and look at, and rivers and whatnot. That's the second tunnel going towards the east side. Now we're headed to Many Glaciers National Park another day on our way up. And it was raining a little bit, but it did clear up towards the end of the day. Many Glaciers Hotel is the showplace of the Rockies, which is a beautiful hotel. We've got flowers, baskets hanging everywhere. And Brenda's ready to go inside and see what we can find. And they got a big old wood-burning fireplace there. And you can see it's pretty cloudy and people are out on the lake there. We went into the dining room because it was time for lunch. And we had to get a Huckleberry Smash drink, which it was really, really good. Huckleberries are good. And then we got some duck wings for an appetizer, which I thought was different, but boy, they were good. Really yummy. We ate those right up. And then next came, I got an elk brat, which that was really good. It was really yummy. Something different. And then after lunch, we just drove around a little bit more. And there's a bear. We found a bear eating some berries. And then we went into east entrance of Glacier and stopped at Glacier Park Lodge and just looked at it a little bit. We didn't even go inside on that one. And we headed up towards Two Medicine, which Two Medicine has quite a story about that. The Indians always went there. And the Glacier Chalets, there it is, and we're here at the end of August, and they're about ready to close. They were going to close at the end of the month for the season, which is winter's coming there early. And it wasn't real cold. We had to have our jackets on, though, because it was plenty cool. Well, after being there for a week, it was time to head out, and we went to East Helena, Montana, to the Missouri River Brewing Company, and overnighted there, which there's no hookups, but it's free parking, and it works good. They have a good place, and really nice people. Had to have a couple drinks, and we had dinner there, and Brenda and I split a sandwich and fries, and they were really good. The next morning, we took off to Juliet, Montana, and went to the Milet Angus Ranch. The owners there are very nice, and just a great big cattle operation, but it was interesting. It was interesting to visit with the one son that was there, and we bought a little bit of the beef from them, and there we are, boondocked out in this field, and it worked out nice. Next, we left and went to Ranchester, Wyoming, to the Lazy R campground, which was a bare minimum campground. It had full hookups, which we needed to dump our tanks. And then we took off towards Casper, Wyoming. But on the way there, we saw the Battle of the Little Bighorn Battlefield. Stopped there, and we were able to get the fifth wheel in, no problem, and parked there and went around and looked at the museum and walked along the grave sites, which we've always heard of the Custer's Last Stand, so we got to see it this time. It was right on the way, which that worked out really good. So we get down to Casper, and we boondocked at a brewery there, the Grunner Brothers Brewery, and that was really good. They had a nice level spot to park the trailer on, and we stayed there overnight. We had lunch there, and it was really good. And nice place. People were great. It's nice to be able to just park and go get something to eat. And kind of looked around Casper a little bit. And of course, I had to figure out which beer I wanted, but I found one. I had the Ben Light. That was a good one. And then next we took off to Cheyenne, Wyoming. We boondocked at a private residence there in Cheyenne, on the north end of Cheyenne, which you had a great view of the whole city. And of course it was a full blue moon that night, and there's a picture of the moon. Then we took off to Colorado Springs the next morning, and we stayed at the Air Force Base down there. And that was really a nice fam camp there in the pines, and it was really nice. Had a great time there. And then we went over to the Garden of Gods and drove through that, which I think I'd gone through when I was little, but I didn't really remember it at all. But we drove around that quite a bit, and it was an interesting place. Really, really nice. Lots of rock formations. It's got a lot of history. It's worth going there and seeing that. Beautiful day we had. You know, the temperature was nice. It was probably in the mid-90s. And then we took off and went up to Pikes Peak that afternoon. That's 19 miles to get up there, if I remember right. And it takes about an hour to drive up there, which that's quite a haul. And as you're driving along, there's lots of places to pull over and look and see. Pikes Peak is right up there, over 14,000 feet. And the grades, the worst grade's about 12%. Of course, we're not pulling the trailer. You're just driving the truck. They ain't going to let you pull the trailer up there. So we got finally up there to the top, and boy, you can tell the difference up there. America the Beautiful song was written up there. That was the inspiration of it. And it's just quite a scenic place to be up. The next morning we took off and headed towards Clayton, New Mexico. And we'd only barely got going in Pueblo, Colorado, just outside of it. My engine light came on, and I called them, and they were able to get me right in and took care of the problem, which it was under warranty. They fixed it, and we were on our way. We got down to Clayton, New Mexico, and we stayed at the Coyote Keys RV Park, which is full hookups, big sites. Really out in the middle of nowhere, but it was well laid out. And then we drove into town and drove around downtown, looking at the old buildings, and it was quite a little boom town years ago, but not now. A lot of buildings are closed up. Then we found the museum, and the museum was nice. We got a tour there through the manager. She took us all through the whole thing. We spent a couple hours there going through that museum. And then we took off and went to Fort Supply, Oklahoma, which that is a strip of land nobody ever wanted out there. It's called No Man's Land. And on the way we saw Slap Out. That was a town, 8 people. Then we get to Fort Supply, Coeur Engineers, right on the water. It was beautiful being there. It was a nice place to be camping. Next we left off to Wichita, Kansas, to McConnell Air Force Base, which was a fam camp there, and it was a nice setup, full hookups, very quiet there. And then we went over to Old Cowtown Museum, which was founded in 1950. It has 54 buildings on 23 acres. It has a lot of history there. It's a recreation of 1865 to 1880 in Wichita. So there's a lot of things that went on there. They have a lot of history, a lot of artifacts. We spent several hours there just wandering around and learned a lot of things. Of course, there I found something to stand on and wanted to ride it. Then we went over to the Aviation Museum there in Wichita, Kansas, which I didn't even know that existed, and didn't really know that Wichita is really instrumental in building a lot of small planes by all kinds of different manufacturers. And that was very, very interesting. So that's definitely a go-to if you're ever there. You got Beechcraft, of course, and Cessna was built there. And that was a very interesting trip. So now it's time to go get packed up and head off towards Missouri. We're here in just outside of Kansas City visiting our friends Ron and Barbara. And they've got a cement pad with a 50 amp hookup and water. And I was able to wash this trailer this morning and get all the bugs off the front end and the sides. So it's clean for at least another couple thousand miles. It's been 5,000 miles since I washed it. Real great of them. Of course, the first day they said, "Where do you want to go eat?" And I said, "We got to go to Jack Stack's Barbecue," as I love Jack Stack's Barbecue. They've got great food, and then we had a great meal. Okay, here's the Three Oak Alley women that are trying to figure out what they're going to be doing this fall. So stay tuned for the plans here in Oak Alley. We stayed with Ron and Barb for a couple days, and Devonna was there visiting also, and then we took off to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And that's a fam camp, and they don't have a lot of spaces there. I don't remember the exact amount, maybe 18, something like that. And then we went to Lake Wapapello, which we had a real good time down there. We stayed there for a week. Had a real nice campsite. We were kind of tucked back away from everybody else, and Brenda's sister Rosemarie came and visited us for a weekend. We had a good time. We went around the lake a number of times looking at things, and it was a very, very interesting trip there. Well, next we took off and went to Jonesboro, Arkansas, and stayed at Boondocker's Welcome at Charlie's Camp, which is on about 15 acres. He has a big, beautiful house, which we didn't really see it, but we saw it on the outside. Nice pond out there. Had 30 amp service, and that worked good. And then we went over to the Crowley's Ridge Nature Center, and that's a very interesting place. If you're in the area, it's well worth going there. They have a very good movie inside to watch, and it has a lot of things about nature and hunting, and everything there is very nice. Then we took off to Elkmont, Alabama, and stayed at Mill Creek RV Park, which that is a gated community. It has a big caboose out front, so you can't miss it. We felt very secure there, and it was a great little stay there. We were able to go over there and visit Brenda's brother Dale, which we hadn't seen for probably a year, I guess. So we had a good time there. We had a good visit. So it was time to leave and head over to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which neither one of us had ever been there, and that was really interesting. We stayed at Quinn Creek RV Resort, and what was nice, the trolley was right out front, so it was just a few feet to walk to, and went and caught the trolley, and we were able to go right downtown. But the park itself is very nice. We had a good stay there, and we were down to Gatlinburg and taking the trolley back and forth from the RV park. That was very convenient. And the trolleys are free to ride, so that makes it really nice. And we went down to Ripley's Aquarium and got off there and walked around all over and had a real good time there. And of course, we found candy shops, which I can't resist. I got to have some of that. And of course it was fall, so they had the pumpkins all out and all the decorations downtown. And then we stopped at the Tennessee Cider Company, which was really good cider. That's real good hard cider. Then we went over to Jason Adeen's for lunch, and that was real good. It's a guy that sings a Big Green Tractor. And we had barbecued ribs, and they were really, really good. And Brenda had the shrimp basket, which she just loved that also. We decided to go over and drive the tail of the Dragon Road, which is 11 miles long. It has 318 curves, hairpin curves, all types of curves. No stop signs, nothing. It was really a great ride through there. A lot of motorcycles drive through it and sports cars, so that was interesting. And then later, another day, we went to Caves Cove. This was a very interesting cove, as has a lot of old buildings. They were basically the European settlers came to this cove in 1830s. And it was beautiful up there. We ran across a little cub bear going across the road. Didn't get a real good picture, and there's Mama Bear there. It has a lot of restored buildings. There's 3 churches in the area, and lots of beautiful scenery in the cove. It was very, very nice. Of course, any old building I love, but it's beautiful there. And then another day we decided in the morning to go over to the old grist mill in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and have breakfast, which they were known for their breakfast, and their breakfast, I'm telling you, is good. They make muffins that are just unbelievable, and breakfast was very, very good. And we could get enough. We ended up going back there twice. And then, of course, they have the store with all kinds of jams and jellies and soup mixes. And it's quite a little area right there. They have a lot of different vendors and stores throughout, just to walk around and look at what they're making and what they're doing. Of course, we had to go to Dollywood. We wanted to go to Dollywood. We thought, well, we're here. Let's just go see it. And it was all decorated up for the fall. They had pumpkins everywhere. All kinds of pumpkin people and all types of pumpkins made every which way you could find. That was quite the spider there. And the little pumpkin people I thought were always cute. And Brenda took lots of pictures of the pumpkin people. And then Brenda and I are there. Beautiful flowers. And this is a replica of Dolly's home, which they did, and it's real interesting. And then, of course, we did go on a ride, and that was quite the ride there. The Mingus Mill was very interesting to go look at. It's a water-powered turbine mill for grinding corn. In the late 1800s, it was built, and it ground corn for 50 years. And the family sold it to the Park Service in 1930. So that was very, very interesting, and that was a nice little trip. And the next day we took off, and we headed to Costco, of course, first. Took a little trip, and then we stopped at Gus's Fried Chicken, and I tell you what, they have got some good chicken. Really good chicken. I'd go back there in a heartbeat. They had fried green tomatoes, which we just loved. And their chicken was nice and crispy, and a little bit of spice and coleslaw and beans. They were good. Then we drove downtown to Market Square. And of course, this is where the World Fair was held many years ago. And next we took off to Abilene, Georgia. And we went to Points West Army Resort, which we'd camped there before. And of course, we saw lots of deer. It was right before the deer season opened up. We saw them up until the deer season opened, and then they were gone. And we had geese that always would cross the road. They thought they owned it. And we had a real nice campsite right on the lake. While we were there, it was Brenda and her twin sister's birthday, so we got together and met for dinner at a Mexican restaurant, which we had a real good time there visiting. And then we went back to the camp, And the next day we headed out just for a little ride, looking at the changing of the leaves. The leaves are starting to change, and we went up just north of Helena, Georgia, which is beautiful up there. We had a real good time just driving around, seeing all the leaves and the countryside, and I love all the hills. And they got lots of pretty leaf patterns, and we had a good time there. And then the next day what we did is we took a little trip, just going through all the little small towns. Went through Conyers, Georgia, and then we went to Jim and Nick's barbecue, which they've got some real good barbecue. They've got some good muffins they make there. We ordered some potato skins for an appetizer, and they were some big potato skins, but they were really good. Brenda got some catfish, and I got some brisket. Then we went over to Rockdale County, Georgia, and found a covered bridge that we'd heard about, and thought, well, let's drive over. I always like covered bridges. So it was going to the old wood mill, and they just built a new one. Then we went to Monroe, Georgia, and looked around there, and drove through the town and looked at some of the old houses and buildings. And then we went over to Social Circle, and that's got a legend. People just sit in the circle and would visit, and that's how it got its name. And then we went to Rutledge, and that was established in 1871. It's got quite a bit of history there. That was very interesting. They've got lots of cotton fields, and of course the train station. That's where they'd haul the cotton from the train station out. And the old hardware store is well known. And then, of course, there's right in the center of town. They had it decorated up for Halloween, and then some old houses that we drove by. We went to Greensboro, and I love this sign. Town of 3,500 people and a few old grouches. And then we've got some beautiful old houses in here that have been restored, and buildings. That was very nice. And of course you can see with the date 1887 on that building. That was quite a while ago. We've got some beautiful old buildings there you don't see out west. And then we went to historic Washington Wilkes, and that was Georgia State Capitol at one time. And then there's the Robert Tomb House, State Historical Site. Some beautiful old houses. And then that ended our day, and we were headed back to Clark Hill. That's where we were staying. Then we went over to Brenda's niece's. She had an early Thanksgiving for all of us, and Brenda was able to visit with all of her sisters, which they had a really good time. And I got to visit with her brothers, and that was fun. That was real fun. And then we went over to Savannah Rapids Park another day, and that's where they had the locks where the rivers change in height. And at one time it was a tourist attraction, and they'd bring the boats up there, and people would stay there and see the scenery because it wasn't really easy to get into. And then the next day we went over to Red Cliff Plantation, which that's a very interesting place with a lot of history. It was completed in 1859 and once was the home of James Henry Hammond. 3 generations of his descendants and numerous African American families like the Hensleys, Goodwins, and Wigfalls who worked at the site as enslaved laborers and later as free men and women. It's one of the very few plantations that has tours, and it was very, very interesting. Beautiful home. They hadn't really totally restored it. They've done some things here and there to repair some stuff. But we had a good time. We were sitting there on the front porch enjoying the view and thinking what would it have been like back in the 1800s, like there. And there's the dining room. And here's the carriage house here, and that was interesting to see the plantation and look at everything that they had to offer. Made a nice day, and the good old big oak tree I really liked. Well, the next day we took off and headed down to Stark, Florida, which it was nice to get back into Florida after our long trip. And we went and stayed at the Joint Training Base there in Camp Blanding, which we'd been there before. It was a nice little setup. It's right on the lake and makes a real nice little site. Every full hookups. We had a great time there. Then the next day we took off and we headed down to Oak Alley. That was going to be our home for 6 months. We finally got here and we're all set up. That's in Webster, Florida. So this ends our trip.